Hello and welcome to Get Focused Millennial Matters Episode 5, UnDACAmented. I am your host, Salena Santibanez Guipzot. Our organization, Growing Empowered Together, or GET for short, connects the dots between personal experiences and public policy in order to motivate more young people to vote and volunteer in Texas. Today's feature highlights two women from San Antonio community whose lives are directly impacted by the DACA program. DACA provided temporary protections to young, undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers. It's a story of the real impact of public policy and executive orders on the lives of so many of our neighbors in San Antonio. It's a story of many young Dreamers in America who have been reclassified as UnDACAmented. Our two guests are Fatima Manendez and Andrea Fernandez. Fatima is a San Antonio native and graduate of St. Mary's Law School. She's a legislative attorney for the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, known as MALDEF. Andrea migrated to the U.S. at the age of 9, is a public policy student at UTSA, president of Immigration Youth Leadership of UTSA. Welcome. Bienvenidas, Fatima and Andrea.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fatima, the DACA program was enacted by then President Obama through executive order in 2012 and ended by President Trump's executive order in 2017. Can you explain to our audience what the acronym DACA stands for and what the program was intended to do?
Definitely. So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. DACA is a program that was enacted by President Obama, as you mentioned, in 2012, and it created an opportunity for those who were brought here as children to the United States and have been living in the United States as undocumented to be able to receive a work permit, to be able to receive deferred action, which means that they would not be in fear of being deported, and that they would also be able to get other benefits such as a driver's license that would assist them in coming out of the shadows and being able to, become productive members of society, which they were before, but really to be able to live up to their full potential.
Okay, thank you for that. And Andrea, as a DACA recipient, do you feel that the word dreamer accurately describes how you feel as a participant in this program? If so, in what way?
I know the word dreamer has had many definitions in the past, and definitely I do feel like the word dreamer does define the DACA community here in this country. Dreamers come from every single place in this nation. They come from every single country, so everyone can be a dreamer. But in my situation, my dreams and my reality are so different from one another. So definitely, I do believe that the word dreamer, does establish something in my community.
Wonderful. Fatima, do you have a personal story that explains what motivated you to want to become an immigration lawyer?
Definitely. So my father is from El Salvador and my mother is from Mexico. My father is a refugee who came here during the Civil War in El Salvador, and he definitely struggled when he got to the United States. I was an immigration attorney before I became an attorney at MALDEF, and so I did practice immigration law for 4 years. And, I definitely was called into the field of working with immigrants and doing work in social justice because I saw my father struggle so much, and because he has the, just the work ethic of, the strongest work ethic that I have ever seen from anybody. And so seeing him really, pull himself up by the bootstraps and come here with a dream and make it happen and provide my brother and I with all of these opportunities, definitely made me realize that, that is the type of person that I want to help with my law license.
So really he was your figure, your role model, if you will, in addition to being your father, but really strived.
Yes, definitely. I definitely saw, him struggle even after he had already, achieved his bachelor's degree in college, and after he got, a good paying job, and he definitely still struggled with discrimination throughout his life because he is an immigrant. And so all of those things really stuck with me growing up, really made an impact, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do since I was a teenager.
Wonderful to see your dream come true, Fatima.
Thank you.
Fatima, briefly, what are the civil rights of immigrants, and why would knowing those rights also be important to DACA recipients?
So immigrants and those that are, here undocumented do have civil rights. Many people that are here in an undocumented status or are immigrants to the United States, they are fearful of ever coming forward if they are discriminated against or are the victims of any sort of crime because they aren't sure that they have those rights, but they do. They have the right of equal protection under the law and also due process. So that is really important that they know that and that they should not be the victim of any sort of discrimination within the United States, and that is something that they can fight.
And now in Spanish, Fatima, brevemente nos puedes explicar cuáles son los derechos de los inmigrantes y por qué es importante que los beneficiarios de DACA conozcan sus derechos.
Es importante que los inmigrantes saben que sí todavía tienen derechos civiles aquí en los Estados Unidos, que ellos no deben ser víctimas de discriminación y que todavía tienen derechos constitucionales.
Gracias. Andrea, how do DACA recipients find out if there have been changes in laws or policies that affect them personally?
Twitter. I know, that sounds interesting to say, but
That is interesting.
the social media is playing a huge part on how millennials and other youth can get our news. And a lot of us in the DACA program fall into that category of age group. And I think in one way or another, we have been able to keep in touch with what has been happening in our situations through social media. We have heard other stories from other DACA students, and we have also kept up with what senators and congressmen have been saying about the situation as well.
So technology has really advanced communication and so forth. Wonderful. Fatima, since the election of Donald Trump, there have been several high-profile cases of DACA recipients being detained by ICE, including Jose Romero.
I was born in Honduras in 1997. I'm 19 years old now. But I left Honduras when I was 4 and got here when I was 6. And a big part of why we came to this country in the first place was to not only leave Honduras and the danger that it posed to us in terms of safety, but also because there's a lot more opportunity here in terms of education, in terms of just a better life in general. And that was almost taken away. Just felt like a normal day. It was a Tuesday night on the 14th of February, and I was at the park late and happened to be stopped by the park police. There, I was basically asked for my papers, didn't have anything, and then proceeded. I got arrested. I thought I was okay. I thought I would be released and not have to deal with ICE, but they started by going around and asking people their name and country of origin. And I mean, at that point, I could tell what they were doing. I was still hopeful, though, that I could fight my case on the grounds that I'm a student here. I've been here like my whole life. I never committed any crime. But they basically told me I would be on a flight to Honduras within the next week or so. My life as I knew it was going to take away.
Why did these incidents make such a stir in national and international news?
I think it garnered so much attention in national and international news because when those who are DACAmented applied for deferred action, they were given an expectation that they were going to be safe and that they were going to have this sense of security. And so to know that they were still being, arrested and still sought after by ICE is definitely concerning for local communities and on a national level.
Definitely. And how did the community organize in San Antonio to advocate on behalf of Josue? Also, what would all of us need to do if ICE detained a member of our undocumented community?
I think what happened with Josue Romero is a really good example of what should continue to happen, should that happen again, and hopefully it doesn't. There were a lot of grassroots organizations in the community that, were organizing a lot of people to make calls and to contact legislatures, local, state representatives, and also their congressmen. They were also making calls to law enforcement here in the county and in the city, advocating for his release, and that pressure really made a difference.
They released my shackles and my cuffs, and basically told me I was being released on an order of supervision. But I checked my phone and started seeing all these posts about me. I want to express my gratitude for everybody that was willing to fight and willing to speak out on my behalf. I would hope that they do the same for anybody else in the situation, because there's a lot of other people right now that are even detained And I mean, I feel extremely grateful. But I know it's hard to be happy and comfortable when I know there's so many people that aren't, that don't have the chance to be.
The community really gathered behind
Yes.
Josue.
Yeah.
And now, Fatima, I'm going to ask you in Spanish, ¿cómo se organizó la comunidad en San Antonio para abogar por Josue? ¿Y qué es que todos tenemos que hacer si ICE detiene a miembros de nuestra comunidad que son indocumentados?
Lo que pasó con Josué es buen ejemplo, lo que debe pasar si eso pasa otra vez y si otra persona que tiene DACA está detenido o detenida. Lo que pasó es que organizaciones aquí en la comunidad estaban llamando a legisladores y también a la policía donde estaba detenido Josué para abogar para la salida de Josué. Y ellos deben hacer eso otra vez, la comunidad, si eso pasa otra vez, porque sí es efectivo.
Gracias. Andrea, the federal government has recently sharply increased the number of ICE raids and often arrests non-targets. Even though you yourself are currently protected against deportation, do you believe that these activities have personally affected you, your family, and your community? If so, how?
I think it's really important to understand that in one way or another, even if I'm not targeted, if the members of my community are being targeted, I feel as if it was a personal attack. And that's just me personally. I know that members of my community no longer feel safe. It is a question on students on whether we can continue to move forward and continue to advocate for what matters to us, if we will continue to be detained for matters that we were supposed to be protected under. I know that it's a really difficult process to go through, but definitely it has affected our community in many more ways than we can actually imagine.
Fatima, the Trump administration recently put an end to new DACA applications, and yet approximately 70,000 of DACA recipients were not able to renew their applications for a wide variety of reasons. Outside of the DACA program, have there been any additional changes that have had an adverse impact on the immigrant community at large?
Definitely. I think there are examples of that have happened here within our state and, in different states. There has been anti-immigrant legislation that has been passed and that has been enacted by other states throughout the country. This is something that I think is occurring on a wider scale right now, and it's something that is occurring more often, unfortunately. We are hoping that our national legislatures will, address this issue, and that will set a tone for our state legislatures.
Andrea, do changes in public policy have an impact on how willing the undocumented community is to interact with the government, and any reason at all?
Definitely, and I think it's really sad to say that there's a lack of trust towards our city police officers now in the city of San Antonio. And it's on the basis of people are afraid if they come out and denounce the crimes committed against them, if they will, one, receive justice, two, be judged for their documented status or undocumented status, or even by being brown. So it's one of those things that sadly all of these anti-immigration legislations and policy changes that have been implemented in the state of Texas and in a federal level have definitely put the immigrant community in a scary situation.
Fatima, is there any reason to believe that the level of tension and fear in the undocumented immigrant community has had an adverse effect on all people of color in Texas, whether it's through racial profiling or some other bias?
Yes, definitely. I think that we have state legislation that has been enacted and that has been passed that definitely encourages racial profiling. And a lot of people, as Andrea mentioned earlier, of the brown community, people of color are definitely going to feel that pressure and that stress. So they are the ones that are going to be most impacted, and them being fearful of coming forward, as she mentioned earlier, should they be the victim of a crime or domestic violence, then puts the entire community at risk, because then they are not reporting crimes that have happened to them, and then we really do have dangerous people on the street.
And I have to think, us living in San Antonio, where it's predominantly Hispanic, how many people we have in our families or just in our communities that will be affected.
Right.
So.
There are many people here in San Antonio that are going to be directly impacted by this.
Andrea, has this fear affected your family specifically?
Definitely. Sadly, because of my advocacy work, my parents are always worried that if I get out in the streets and I advocate for what I believe in, that there might be a possibility of retaliation made towards me. And sadly, I have faced some discrimination already based on my advocacy work here in the city of San Antonio. So definitely, it does play a part on my everyday life and on my parents' fears.
And can you tell us about that time in your life when you decided to apply for DACA? What were your closest family and friends saying to you about the risk and the benefits?
Definitely, my family has always been very supportive about DACA. I didn't actually hear any protest about me applying for DACA until most recently. And it was based on the idea that what will happen with the information that I had already given. When I first applied for DACA, it came at the perfect time. I was a junior in high school. I was about to look at colleges. And I knew that this was my opportunity to achieve some of the dreams that I had already set for myself. I had a high school counselor tell me that I would not be able to go to college. And the opportunity opened for me once DACA was established. So I never had a fear of opening myself to those doors of DACA. But now I am aware that I did possibly put myself in a dangerous situation.
Andrea, what advice would you offer to other young undocumented people who are worried that they will not be able to realize their dreams in this country?
I know that it's a difficult time to be put in, and it is a difficult situation just overall. It will make a lot of efforts for all of us to realize all of our dreams, but this nation was founded on dreams. It should not be a stop to us now. We were here before DACA was here. We will continue to be here if DACA is not here.
And now in Spanish, Andrea. ¿Qué consejos ofrecerías a otros jóvenes indocumentados que están preocupados de no poder realizar sus sueños en este país?
Creo que es muy importante tener en mente de que aquí estábamos antes de que DACA estuviera en pie y aquí vamos a estar después de que DACA se vaya. No importa lo que nos digan, nosotros podemos y siempre vamos a poder. Es nada más luchar y seguir luchando por esos sueños.
Andrea, almost 2/3 of Americans support the continuation of DACA. In your experience, what part of the public debate about DACA has resonated most positively with the public and why?
I think it's the idea of the American dream. And I know that a lot of people tend to demonize, sadly, the parents of undocumented students that were brought here because we are being told that it was by no fault of our own. And I will agree with that statement. I did not choose to come here. But at the same time, I do realize that my parents had to come here because we had no choice. It was to survive. I think most U.S. citizens and Americans resonate with the idea of DACA and are supportive of the DACA program because they realize that we are students and that we are here trying to better ourselves in one way or another. Many people realize that we have been contributing to our communities for many years now. And whether it is the economic roles that the DACA will actually play on our communities, or if it's the emotional bonds that we have formed with other people. I can go ahead and attest that I grew up with American children. The people that I grew up with in my street, we played every single day, and I don't think they actually realize how deeply the situation impacted me until now. And that is when I've received so much support from my community, when they realized that I was just like them, and it was just the status of my immigration status that was not allowing me to continue to pursue my dreams.
Fatima, what is the most common argument that others make against retaining the DACA program? How would you respond to them?
I think, as Andrea mentioned, these people, and Andrea included, those who are documented, were brought here as children, and that is the entire, basis for the DACA program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. A lot of people, I think, are trying to demonize and trying to criminalize the fact that they were brought here undocumented, and that is their biggest issue. Other than that, there is no real argument because they are contributing members of society. They do not have criminal records, none of them are felons, they don't have significant misdemeanors. They are contributing to our economy, and they are hardworking students and community members. So there really is no other argument except the fact that they were brought here undocumented.
If a person supports DACA, does that mean that they necessarily also must be in support of a pathway to citizenship for all DACA recipients?
It does not. So I think there is a large misconception that those who have DACA were then able to naturalize and become citizens. DACA simply provided an avenue for those immigrants who were brought here as children to be able to come out of the shadows, to be able to get a work permit, to get a social security number, to be able to get a driver's license depending on their state law. And so that provided them an avenue for that so that they can continue to be productive members of society, but it did not provide a road to citizenship. So those are two separate things.
In order to have a pathway to citizenship, what needs to happen?
That would need to be a congressional movement and a congressional decision. So we need our legislatures to pass legislation that would provide a permanent solution for those who are documented and for anybody who would like to have a change in immigration law. That needs to be something that happens through Congress.
Anti-immigrant sentiments are the rise in America. Some are saying that there is currently a war on immigrants in the U.S., whether those immigrants are documented or undocumented. Andrea, from your vantage point, does it feel like our country is in the midst of a war on immigrants to you?
I think Lin-Manuel Miranda put it really clearly in his Hamilton mixtape. Suddenly, the word immigrant has become a bad word. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad to think that in one way or another, if you say the M word in some cases, that just creates like this big political conversation where everyone has to be polarized. But immigrants, being an immigrant is a human rights issue. It's a human issue. It shouldn't be a political issue. And sadly, in one way or another, we have seen very huge anti-immigrant rhetoric here in the United States. So whether it is a war or not, that would be up to someone else's opinion. But yes, there is definitely anti-immigrant rhetoric being pushed around here.
And then Fatima, do undocumented immigrants in Texas pay local, state, or federal taxes? Do they pay into Social Security and Medicare?
So immigrants do pay into local, state, and federal taxes. However, they are not receiving benefits for that. In some situations, they are able to receive Medicare, emergency Medicare, if they have an emergency and go to the hospital, or if they are an undocumented parent who has a child who is a United States citizen, the child does have the right to receive benefits, but the parent does not. However, they can get them in the name of the child because that child was born here or is a naturalized citizen.
What do they get in return for their financial contributions in the way of social services and benefits?
Undocumented immigrants are not eligible to receive social benefits. However, if they have a child who is a United States citizen, they are able to receive food stamps or WIC for that child and in that child's name. However, undocumented immigrants are not able to take out or receive those benefits for themselves. Also, undocumented immigrants are able to attend school, public K through 12. They do have the legal right to get a public education.
Andrea, do you feel like you're an American? And if so, can you explain what being an American means from your perspective?
Definitely. I think I've grown up in this country. I went to public schools here in the city of San Antonio. I grew around American children. I don't feel any different than any of them. I absolutely adore every single opportunity that this country has given me. And not only that, but I am very conscious of the fact that I am privileged in some ways. Being an American is not a brand. It's not a stamp, if you would even say. It's sort of like, it's your own standing. It's your belief that you want to see the betterment in this country, in my opinion. It is wanting to see the best for this country and for the people in this country. It's an interesting question to ask, but definitely I do feel like an American.
If you became a citizen and were able to vote in the United States, what would that opportunity mean to you and your family?
To be honest, it would mean the world to me. I've always wanted to vote. Obviously, that is not a thing that is available to me, but knowing that there is a country that allows the citizens the right to participate in elections, that gives them a voice, is incredible to me. And I wish more people were able to use that right, because that is a right that is given to American citizens. I think in my case, I would probably vote in every single election that was possible and given to me, to be honest. If I was an American citizen, oh, trust me, I would be voting for every single constitutional amendment election, every single municipal, federal, state, whatever election that you placed in front of me. And mostly I would be voting for the rights of my community, because I understand that in one way or another, voting rights are important, and that is the way to establish those rights for those minorities that are being affected by many of the implementations and policies right now.
Andrea, one of the goals that our organization has is to motivate young people to vote and volunteer, to work on that issues that matter the most to them. Do you volunteer?
Definitely, I do volunteer in my community a lot, and whether it's with obviously being involved in the government or being involved with polarized public policy sectors, but I'm involved in many ways in my community. I used to volunteer for girls in around Bear County. I used to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, SNPSA, San Antonio Pets Alive. So definitely I have been involved in my community in that way. But obviously my work is revolved around the voter rights of the citizens here in this country. I personally may not be able to vote, but my main volunteer work and my main work revolves on making it easier for other people to vote and being informed on what they are able to vote on.
What would you say to other young, undocumented immigrants about whether or not they should become civically engaged?
This is the thing. I feel like my community should always be engaged. It shouldn't have been an issue of back when DACA was rescinded. It shouldn't have been an issue of when DACA was enacted. I think it's, and I've seen this in my community, we've always been civically engaged in one way or another. And civical engagement can be something really small, like sharing something on Facebook, believe it or not. And it can go all the way out to sitting in your state's capital and protesting on the rights of your fellow, your fellow friends and family members. And I think, if anything, now is the time to speak up, because if no one is going to speak for you, might as well you speak up for yourself.
Fatima, we often hear people say that they don't vote because political candidates are all the same, just a bunch of crooks who don't care. As a civil rights attorney who knows the law, what would you say to them? Are all politicians the same?
They are not. I definitely think, the prime example of there being a difference in politicians is exactly what happened with DACA. We had one president who, enacted this program and who put it into effect, and then we have another president who rescinded the entire program. And that president was in charge of selecting his cabinet members, and this is a direct result of elections and of voting and who we have in power.
We would like to thank Fatima and Andrea for joining us today. It's so inspiring to learn about the crucial legal work that Fatima is doing on behalf of DACA recipients, and Andrea for being a brave and beautiful voice for dreamers. You can learn more about these topics and our organization Growing Empowered Together by visiting the sites listed on the screen.